Miss Mendiola. Thank you for coming by and taking the time to meet with me. I enjoyed being in your classroom the other day with first grade, and we were talking about the Boston Tea Party. It's amazing that we have first graders talking about the Boston Tea Party.
Yes, surprised me.
These American history events for first grade. But I enjoyed being in there, and I appreciate you bringing your teacher manual. I also have a copy of that in my notes, and I have some of my notes that I want to talk to you about, because I want us to think about what we've been looking for in ELA all year long. Some look-fors. Do you remember some of the look-fors that we've had throughout the year? I know fidelity was one, and student engagement. And so those two I want to hit on in our conference today. So, but before we do that, I want you to tell me, how do you think it went? I walked out of there. What was your feeling and on the progress of your students?
I felt like they were understanding what I was trying to get out of them, and I felt like I was being really repetitive, but at the same time, like, they were able to make those connections and like basically just call out what the important points were in the story or for this topic.
Mm-hmm. And so we're talking about you getting better faster, okay? You know, you've heard that with our coaching, and I want you to think now about your instruction and your delivery. How do you think that you did? And look at your manual. Feel free to look. As you look at the lesson, what are some things that you were very proud of when you were teaching the students this lesson in particular?
Well, I liked how I went back and talked about the previous day, so they have that connection, and for them to just recall everything that we talked about and how it connects to the next topic, which was the Boston Tea Party. And then I also liked how I explained to them in my own words something that they could understand, because I know sometimes, like, when they read and listen, listen to the read aloud, some of the words or the way that they describe it is a little hard for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I always do stop and like talk to them about it in like a more easier way for them to understand. Chunking it,
chunked it. Yes, I noticed that when I was in there, and that was one of the glows that I wrote down, actually. And I agree with you, and I know we're talking about that in our department, about just kind of listening to the reader and what can we do more in case they aren't tuned into that. But I said I want to talk about fidelity, but let's tie that to the modeling that's taking place in your PLCs, the at-bats, the lesson planning protocol. Tell me how you use those to prepare for your lessons.
So I do appreciate when we do the at-bats, because just seeing how everybody, because we're all teaching the same thing, but we all have a different way of how we teach each aspect for our kids. But it's nice to see how other teachers teach their part, and it gives me ideas on how I can teach that as well. Because maybe for me it's not working, or they're not as engaged, and whatever they're doing sounds or seems more engaging, so I try that as well. And then also when we do when we dive into our new domain, and then we talk about what the formative assessment is going to be, what we really need to focus on for each lesson, I feel like that's helpful. Because there's a couple of questions where they're like, it's not that we shouldn't be asking them, but they're not as important. So it's kind of like, we can take that one off and try to focus on this one more, because we know that's what's going to be on their formative assessment. So be more intentional.
Mm-hmm. So you go to your PLCs, you have your at-bats, y'all are planning, and I know you don't hit like the whole week of lessons in that one PLC. So tell me what you do from that meeting until instructional delivery. What do you do to help prepare yourself? Because I'm getting to talking about fidelity. So I want to know what you do after the meeting, but then you have to teach your weekly lessons. So what is it that you do?
Well, I usually, in the index card, I write out the date and then I write out like what questions to ask. And then what I do as it's going, and I know like some of the questions that I do write down, and when I do ask them, the kids kind of like are still not giving me what I want. So that's when I start asking more questions, but that's not what's written down. That just comes
Okay.
as I'm
Did you
teaching.
do that when I was in the room?
What was
Did you do that for this lesson?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
I have-
okay,
I
I
have
didn't
that.
see that. I didn't see the
Oh,
card.
I usually just have it like right there.
Okay,
I don't have it in front of me.
I did see you reading your manual, and that's
Mhm.
good. You had it in front of you. And so I want to talk about something that we can use with that, in looking at our manual while we're teaching. So that's one thing I want to talk about. Let's skim and scan the lesson, because I want to see, are there some things that you feel like you skimmed over that maybe were important that you did hit, or some things that you didn't say, or do you feel like did you answer all the questions, ask the questions with the kids? Do you think that you presented the lesson the way it was outlined in the book?
I feel like it was a little bit different, but I did feel like I went through it with fidelity, like you said. I know in each of the lessons it does have that universal axis, which is kind of like an extension, or like if they're not getting it quite that much, it's just for them to get a better understanding. Like I know for this lesson it says to bring certain things so that they understand those words. That's something I did not do, but it's something I could use if I know that there's a certain word that they're not gonna understand. But I felt like the vocabulary, they really understood it, because I did give them like real life examples, like in the word taxes. Again, real life examples.
You did, and the randomization, I wrote that down as a glow, and the fact that you really repeated those vocabulary words was a glow I wrote down also. But I heard you say maybe you missed or didn't hit everything. So I want to talk to you about a little trick or a way we can tweak that so you can hit all of those questions that you want. Because you said it yourself, you want all of the kids to make sure they're understanding. And you mentioned the universal, let's see, oh yeah, that's on page 23. I did look at that, and I'll just say that I felt like for the first graders, that would have been something to kind of get their attention,
Right.
kind of attention grabber. I felt like that would have helped them, but you're right, that was that universal. And then in the vocabulary, I heard you hit all of the vocabulary, I didn't hear revolted as much as the other ones.
Right.
When you were going through your, the check for understanding for that. But I want to talk to you about a way that we can connect when we're pre-planning in those at-bats to when you're actually in the room. And you said you use note cards. I didn't see them, so that was on the side. But I brought some sticky notes here, and I thought we could use sticky notes to color code some of the key important parts that you don't want to make sure that you don't miss in the lesson. You might find it helpful, and I was thinking that we could talk about that and then practice it, and then we can follow up and talk about whether it's something that you would like to implement all the time, or if this is something that you have a different way, because you mentioned your note cards. So based on what we're talking about, I'm wondering about your pre-work, your questions, the visual tools, and engagement. So I know that if we took sticky notes and we looked at our lesson, we could outline what some of those target areas are. So you mentioned the the universal access here. Well, that's part of the pre-work. So I could see, okay, maybe I'm gonna say my pre-work is gonna be pink. I wanna put this here and I wanna make sure I hit this when I talk about it. You may not want to bring in, like you said, if you feel like your kids don't need it, but this is just an indicator to you, okay, this is pre-work that I need to make sure that I'm hitting. So then when you go through your core vocabulary, like, I know that you said that you hit all of the vocabulary. I didn't hear you say revolted. So I thought, well, did she forget that one? Or because you're looking at your
Right.
manual, you're looking at your Promethean board, you're monitoring the kids. And so I thought one thing that we could do was really, and part of our fidelity would be to color code these 4 items. The pre-work, your questions, your visual tools, and engagement. And the reason I highlighted those was because I know those are look-fors.
Right.
So let's go back to our lesson, number 2. So the pre-work, I want you to put a sticky note on page 23, because that's our advanced preparation. And if we go to the next page, we see our vocabulary, and then we keep going. This is introducing the read aloud. But this is a lot of text on the page. And like I said, you're going back and forth. So I want to, let's see if we set up a key and we said that pink is the pre-work, okay? And then we say purple is gonna be the questions. And I know that y'all are being intentional with the questions, but we aren't changing the questions. We're just picking and choosing ones that we are really focusing on more, right? So then blue can be our visual tools, because we don't want to miss out any of our visuals. And then we have orange for engagement. So let's look and see where we would put sticky notes in for questioning. Okay, so if looking back for this lesson, where do you think let's do it together. This is what have we already learned.
So this is just a connection of what they've previously heard from the read aloud the day before. So those also do include questions, but it's more of a we do. So they're working together as a group to answer the questions, but we're posing the questions, they're answering.
So we would put a sticky note here. Okay, so I'm gonna put sticky note here on mine. Now, does this present itself a level of engagement, or is this you doing the Q&A, or are they turning and talking?
So right here it says to divide them in groups, so they're working as groups.
Okay,
And then at the end we're all talking about it together.
so you feel like this is a level of engagement that you wanna make sure we hit. Okay, I'm gonna put that on my lesson, in my book, right? Okay, so here's the check for understanding here. It says have students stand in a circle or in lines. Now, I wasn't in the lesson for this part. Did you guys do that?
No, we did not, but we did talk about the 13 colonies there. And I did have a visual of them, and they were naming them.
Okay, so this is a question for us to say, is this where I need to implement with fidelity based on student needs? Did it work for your classroom at the time? But I would still consider this a level of engagement, because they're embedding movement in here. And if you didn't do that, and maybe you talked about it in at BATS, I'm not sure, but this would be where I would put a sticky note and say, okay, this is engagement, and I don't want to miss out on that. Where sometimes as teachers we might think, I don't have time to do that, or that's going to be disruptive for them, and we skip over it. But there is still some important takeaways from that, because that's a connection with movement and the learning and the knowledge. So we put an E there for this, okay? So then, this is where I came in when they were having the read aloud. And so, I heard you say that you stopped
I
the
do.
video, and can you tell me where you stopped?
It's usually in the gray parts. Some of them are just where like the word representative, and it just kind of tells them what it means more. So I stop in those parts. I stop when there's questions, or
So-
even if there's not questions like this part, there's no gray area here.
Mhm.
So, but I still do stop to just,
So are you gonna
Kind of
do a check for understanding there? You might wanna put a questioning sticky
Mhm.
note there. So you have discussion here and you're just restating is what you're saying, okay?
and then there's some that have questions, and that's where I stop and ask questions.
Okay, so the next place that we might put a sticky note could be, this is a lot of pointing and stopping.
Those will all be like visuals for those.
Okay, so having a visual, on the screen versus having the visual cards, does it say to use visual cards, or does it say you can, have it on the screen? What would be better for your kids?
I do both. So as we're reading the read aloud, we're looking at the visual cards, like the flip book.
Uh-huh.
But
I
then,
didn't see the flip book.
Yeah, that
so
was on the.
I saw
read aloud.
I saw the screen,
Mhm.
I saw that. So, is that what you're talking about?
Yes,
Okay, so, but do you have the visual cards up? Did you have visual
I
cards up?
didn't have them when you were in there, but I do display them as well when I
Okay.
make anchor charts, or when we're doing charts that they're doing
Mhm. So-
from their Activate book.
When you do that and refer to that in the lesson, I would want you to put a sticky note there.
Okay.
So we could say, visuals. Okay, well this is my key. Because we wanna make sure we don't forget, because especially with your kids, I mean, your lessons are planned for first graders.
Right.
So, we wanna make sure that we are not skipping those parts. So here we're continuing with the visuals, showing the image, and you were doing that. I remember that you pointed to the men and that the kids were recalling their name. Okay, so here's some questions. So we could put a sticky note in here. And whether you're drawing arrows, highlighting, whatever, this is just a trick I would use. So this brings me to the comprehension questions. We could put our sticky note here, make sure that we're hitting them and not skipping them. I checked off the questions that you asked. You asked 4 out of 5 of those questions.
Okay.
So the fact that one was missing, to me, I thought, well, I questioned, did she do that intentionally? But the question that you skipped was a literal question. So I thought, well, maybe that was intentional because you knew you had already covered it. But like, if you were to miss, like in the inferential question or one of these higher level thinking questions, that's missed opportunity for us to engage our kids in that learning. So that's why I want to give this hint. Let's color code and make sure we're hitting all the questions. This day he did, what I saw, 4 out of 5. So going to this check for understanding. Look at that, look at page 32. It was a think, pair, share. And guess, I heard you ask that question, but I didn't hear you form it as a think, pair, share. So that is why I thought, okay, well, this is an engagement opportunity that was missed. So that's why I would say, let's color code so you don't miss it. You said the question.
Right.
So you were talking about the knowledge, but I thought, what can we talk about in our conference to just help let you rise up a little bit with those students doing the thinking and talking, because you were doing a lot of the thinking and talking for them. So like, I would put an E here, okay? So this is just, we aren't gonna go through all of the lesson, but the word work, I was checking off as you were going. You have the practice of fidelity, of implementing that with your kids. I left there with the fear, though, we want to make sure that we're pulling in all the engagement that we can to keep them doing the ones that's thinking, and them guiding their thinking and helping their peers, and having them respond,
Right.
versus the Q&A. So that's why I thought we could use the sticky notes. So I wanted to practice that with you. And then the sequencing events, the lesson talks about cards a lot. And you were doing the visuals on the Promethean board. And so in our conversation, I wanted us to put an E there for engagement. But you get more engagement, especially with first graders, if they're touching and moving and manipulating those cards. And it's hard for them to do that on the Promethean board. So one suggestion I would say is to actually have them, they could be up there holding it, and they were sequencing it so the kids could be moving in order as you were talking about it, because you were talking about everything outlined here in the right order. I just felt like if the kids were being a part of that more, it would help them increase their engagement and attention. So I would put an E here, for engagement. So that's something I want you to look at when you're looking at your lesson. Again, complimentary, you're going through it with fidelity. We just don't want to miss out on the understanding. So this check for understanding says recall. It says describe and discuss the pictures, then write captions for them. And it says ask students to turn and talk to a partner and do that. I did not see that, but I also left after this part, so I don't know if that was something you did. I know that y'all wrote captions together as a class. You did that on the screen. You wrote it. But when it says for students to do that or turn and talk with a partner and do that, that's just that missed opportunity for engagement. And I know that's a look for our campus, because that's going to increase their learning. So if you were to use these sticky notes and pre-plan, then look at what we have. You have, I know this is messy, but when you're teaching your lesson and you have your manual all sticky note like this, you're like, okay, I did that. I'm going to check off. I did that engagement piece. And you're reading your manual like you were, but you can see, okay, don't want to miss this one. So this was just a trick, and I thought we could look at maybe a lesson that you're doing tomorrow.
Okay.
And let's just kind of look and see, can we put some sticky notes in there that we don't want to skip or miss, and just bring more attention to it.
Okay.
So what lesson are you doing tomorrow?
Declaring independence, lesson 4.
Oh my goodness. So is there any pre-work there that we need to highlight, or if there was pre-work or pre-planning that you want to make sure you don't miss, I would put a sticky note there. Like here, show students the 4th of July on the calendar, and then draw a birthday hat, or maybe you want to bring in a birthday hat. The kids can totally relate to birthdays. So let's put, we might want to put something there, and you can have a key. I know you're very particular about how you like your things in your room, so you can get your own system, but yes, we want to draw attention to that.
Okay.
So then let's look for the next, the next part. This is introducing the read aloud. I see a check for understanding. Is that a piece that might have student engagement that we don't want to miss?
So this one is kind of like a question, asking just a few students here. It's not a turn and talk.
So we can use that just for a question, and we don't want to miss. The flags are just for you to think about. What could I make sure I'm not missing?
Questioning here as well.
Okay, you want a sticky note there? You said you pretty much do the gray part for
Yes.
sure. So you may not want to put a sticky note for every grade part. But the turn and talks, or how you have those students really taking ownership.
Right here is an engagement piece.
Okay, let's do an orange for engagement. And then what kind of engagement? Okay, you said turn and talk. Okay, okay.
And then right here would be visuals. It's just like questioning, but also visuals.
Okay, so let's put a blue for visual. There's a recall.
Yeah, that recall, and it's asking them about what captions are. Visuals here too.
Okay. So the picture gallery really, possibly to help your engagement, maybe they're actually looking at the pictures and not going through the slideshow. Because one other thing, it could be that if you have those up, the kids can always refer to them. Sometimes, you know, when you're working on the Promethean board, the pictures go away.
Right.
But when you're talking, I know you flip back a couple times to the picture with the Boston Tea Party where they were actually, you know, in the boat. And so you went back to that a couple times to get them to see it. But if you had that posted in your room or right next to the Promethean board, you can just point back and say, remember we were talking about this,
Right.
and then keep going with the Promethean board. But yes, so the visuals and picture clues, excellent. Any more engagement for that one? So how are they getting their captions done here? Oh, index cards. So, I mean, that's a piece of engagement right there, that they're actually having to
Come up with a caption.
yes. So, I mean, we aren't gonna do the whole lesson, but I think that if you would try this, I'd like to follow up with you, and see after 1 week of you trying this, to see if that helps you not skip or miss over any engagement pieces or visual clues, anything like that, because it just helps draw attention to making sure we aren't skipping. But again, I'm very complimentary of the fact that you had your manual, you were going through the sequence, and I saw you refer back to the manual, and there were a couple pauses, and I know that we'll get our flow, you know, stronger and without as many gaps once we are learning this. But I compliment you, but I think this might be a trick that
I actually do like this, especially like with the engagement piece. Like there's parts where we could change it, but still be engaging.
So before we leave, what is it that I want you to try for 1 week?
More engagement and more visuals.
With using
sticky notes.
Yes, and that's great. We'll see, and you don't have to, you can use flags or dividers, whatever, highlight. I don't know if we can highlight in our books, but maybe that's something you want to color code highlighting. It's just a trick that will help us make sure that we are hitting those look-fors on our campus, which is fidelity and student engagement. But I did enjoy being in your room.
Thank you.
I look forward to coming back.